Hello, and welcome to episode 117 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. My name is Greg Lindberg. On this particular episode, we are chatting with a young lady from the Boston, Massachusetts area, and she happens to be a multi-sport adaptive athlete as well as a musician. And I think you'll really find her story extra compelling because she actually got into sports and recreation a little bit later in life, as opposed to playing sports as a child. So let's get rolling now with episode 117 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. Okay, so my guest here on this episode is Wynter Pingel. And Wynter is a beat baseball player, an adaptive runner, and also a musician. Wynter, welcome to Eyes Free Sports.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you joining us here. I know you mentioned you've been a long-time listener to this podcast, so really appreciate that. And it's awesome to always connect with my listeners here as guests, so thank you.
Absolutely.
So why don't we just kick things off here, Wynter, with, from the beginning, just as far as your early years, just talk to me about where you were born and where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up, I was born and raised in a small town in the Midwest in Wisconsin. And I was born premature. So I have retinopathy of prematurity. That is my eye condition.
Yep. Any siblings or?
I'm the middle. I have an older brother and a younger sister, and we're pretty close in age. A little less than 2 years between my brother and I, and a little over 2 years between my sister and I. So that was nice growing up with siblings close in age. I feel fortunate to have that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And either sibling visually impaired as well, or?
Nope. I'm the lucky one. There were no eye conditions in my family or anything, and it was just the prematurity that caused mine. So I'm the only one.
Gotcha. Oh, I see. And then, so as far as your education, were you mainstream? Did you attend any kind of blind school? Just talk to me about your education background.
Sure. I was mainstreamed for all the way through from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then I chose to go to what was then called the Wisconsin School for the Visually Handicapped my freshman year of high school. And then after my freshman year, I went back to my hometown and I finished high school mainstreamed. So mostly mainstreamed, and then the 1 year at the School for the Blind.
I see. And I'm definitely curious, just kind of the difference in education, kind of in the approach to teaching, that you experienced in mainstream versus a blind school.
So I would say that I was fortunate in my mainstreaming experience to get a really good academic education. I had a teacher of the visually impaired who worked with me, and because I was really the only blind student, I was the only blind student in our town. She spent most of her time with me, and then she did travel and had a couple of other students, but most of the percentage of her time was spent with me. And she was an excellent teacher, and really made sure, helped to advocate for me in my classes, and made sure that I had everything that I needed. And she also had really high expectations of me, which I think is important because I think we all, or many of us, have experienced low expectations, and they can be kind of low expectations by other people can cause you to have low expectations of yourself, and you might not even realize it. But I was fortunate. She had really high expectations of me, and I got a really good academic education. But some of the more specific blindness skills were a little bit more difficult to get. I didn't have orientation and mobility instruction until I was 11. And someone would come up from, 2 hours away, once every couple of weeks. Maybe it was once a week. Maybe it was once every couple of weeks. I can't remember, for that. And I hated it.
Nope, same here, similar age.
Yeah. So when I went to the school for the blind, I had orientation and mobility instruction every day, daily living skills, all of the things that I hadn't really been getting in my mainstream education. And so that was a plus for the school for the blind, but the academic education was a lot more challenging because there were, I think, 80 students at the school as a whole, and it was a K-12 school. And so a math class, for example, would have a couple of students in algebra and a student in geometry, and a teacher trying to work with all of them and give them what they needed. And I think at that time, the school was a little bit more geared toward preparing for vocal rather than college prep. So the academic education experience, I didn't feel like was as good there.
Right. Interesting insight. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So then kind of advancing on to higher education and in your career, anything you want to mention there?
Well, I went to, after I graduated from high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I went to a small private Catholic college, and I majored in vocal performance, singing. And then when I left there, I came out to Boston, and I went to Berklee College of Music and got a degree in music production and engineering. And I worked in a recording studio for a couple of years in college, and then after I graduated. But then I kind of took a completely different turn, and I worked for the National Braille Press as a proofreader for about 8 years. And then after that, I really started to feel sort of burnt out on that job. And I took a deep breath and jumped off the cliff and quit my day job and thought, well, I'm just going to try to see what I can do with music. And that's what I did. And that's still where I am. And it's been 8 years now that I've been out of the 9-to-5 world and doing working as a gigging musician. And I love it. I'm very happy with the decision that I made.
Wow, that's awesome. And that's quite a leap of faith that, a lot of people would not take, but it sounds like it definitely paid off for you.
Yeah, it was scary, but I think some of the most rewarding things in life are scary at first.
That's so true. Yeah. And I'm curious, just kind of on that note, do you have any advice for perhaps someone listening to this, thinking about making a big decision, whatever it might be in their lives, and what kind of advice would you tell them to kind of go for it and take the chance?
Oh gosh, I feel like that might get me into trouble. But I mean, I think if you are really feeling unfulfilled, and then I would say life is short, and try to do it as responsibly as you can. But if you want to go for it, go for it. I made I tried to be as responsible with the decision as I could be. I refinanced my condo so that I knew that I would be able to make the payments with less money coming in, or I didn't know how much money was going to be coming in. So there are things you have to think about, but I think that I was in a place where I was feeling like I was just on a treadmill day to day, or a merry-go-round where I just couldn't. I needed to reassess, and I was feeling unhappy and unfulfilled, and I didn't feel like I could take a step back unless I just quit my job. And so that's what I did. I mean, life is too short to live it unfulfilled. It's really, that's what I feel.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that, your insight there, and just, your honesty and transparency as well.
Hopefully nobody will make a bad decision and blame me, but
Yep, don't blame me. Don't blame Wynter. This is all just a conversation. So cool. Okay, so then we'll definitely get more into your music toward the end of the episode. But transitioning to sports, so I'm curious, as a child, did you play any sports growing up?
I played no sports whatsoever. I didn't get a lot of, there wasn't a lot that I would do in physical education classes. They kind of didn't know in the mainstream school what to do with me. So,
Nope.
I kind of got to, that was like almost like a free period sometimes. I could kind of just do what I wanted. I liked being active, but not to any kind of an extreme degree. I loved, I had a big trampoline in my yard that I loved being on. And as a child, I did some cross country skiing. My family would do that, but I didn't have any team sports. I didn't really have anything like that. And I was also somebody who, when we would have like the fitness testing days at school, I could never run the mile. I could run for a little while, and then I'd have to walk. And
Right.
so that's kind of what my childhood was like, sports wise.
Yep. And then, so I understand, as an adult, you kind of turned the tables on yourself, so to speak, and took the plunge into sports, right?
I did, and I will tell you, it's honestly, it's one of the most joyful experiences to realize that who you thought you were and who you saw yourself as, that's not a concrete thing. That is something that can always be changing. So a couple of years ago, I found Tyler Marin's Revision Fitness app, and I know you've had Tyler on, and I really, really look up to him as an athlete and as just a person. I've never met him, but I feel like he has really inspired me. And I found his app, and I started to use his workouts and go through the workout plans. And that was kind of at the beginning of the winter time. And then as the weather started to warm up, I wanted something that would get me outdoors and that was maybe a little bit more social. And so I had worked with a guy at National Braille Press who played beep ball, and he had mentioned it to me several years ago. And he'd mentioned it to everyone, that worked at the press, if you want to come and give it a shot. And I was not into it at all at the time. And
Right.
this is a little bit of a strange thing to say, maybe, but I feel like it's kind of important. I still felt a little bit of, I want to say, kind of shame about my own blindness. I was not surrounded by a lot of blind people growing up and got messages about it that were not that positive. And so when he asked if I would be interested in trying beepball, all I could think of was like, that probably looks really stupid. Like if sighted people are watching this, it probably looks really dumb. And, that was my immature thought at the time. It was like, I wasn't interested at all. And that same guy also used to be a Paralympic runner. And so he also had kind of tried to get me into running. And I tried it for a little bit, but I really wasn't, it really didn't stick. And then fast forward, and I was using Tyler's app and I thought, okay, I'll get a hold of my friend Joe and see, what can he recommend for some sort of a sport for me to get into? And he said, well, I just started this new beepball team. Why don't you come and give it a try? And I came to my first practice and I was hooked. I was hooked immediately and wished that I hadn't waited so long. But, you do things when you're ready. I couldn't have done it any sooner because I didn't want to. But
sure. And was it, did you step up to the plate to hit initially? What was kind of your actual first step out on that field, and where did you go?
I think the first thing that they had me do was bring a bat and see how that looked. If I had any ability to swing a bat well, and I didn't really. When I was a kid, I think my father had showed me kind of how to swing a bat, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I think they might have put me out in the field to see what it was like, to hear the beeping ball coming at you. And then they did have me run a base, and I think I jogged / walked it, and it took me about 30 seconds to get there. So that was my first experience, and I still, I was hooked. Even with that, I was hooked on it.
Right. Very interesting. And I'm also curious. So obviously, Boston has had the Boston Renegades, I believe, since 2000 for a long time now. And the Boston Strong, it's a very new team, and I'm curious, just based on your experience, getting to be part of a new team, new group, what has that been like for you?
I love it because I feel like it's great to be with something since almost day one, because you really feel like a family. You really feel like you're growing together, you're learning together, and you really learn to have each other's back, because most of you don't know what you're doing at first, and so you really become kind of a tight-knit group, and I really like that. I'm really looking forward to seeing where we can take the Boston Strong. We're getting better all the time, and it's exciting. We're going to the World Series this year for the first time, and
nice.
Yep. I think we don't. Some of us have been before. There are a few players / coaches who have played with the Renegades, so they know what they're in for. But I think a lot of us don't really know what it's going to feel like to play, 3 games a day in 90+ degree weather. So I'm looking forward to that surprise.
Gotcha. Yup.
Yeah.
So this will be your first World Series then?
The first one. And I'm really looking forward to it, because not only do we get to play a lot of games, but I'm looking forward to watching other teams play and just meeting a lot of new people who are into beepball.
Nice. Very cool. I'm curious, any specific moments, games, tournaments that you've had the chance to play in that come to mind that are memorable?
Well, every game has been memorable, really, for one reason or another, since I am still so new at it. I would say last year we've been playing we've been playing some doubleheaders against the Long Island Bombers because they're rebuilding their team and we're building ours. So we're a good competitive match for each other right now. And last October, we played a doubleheader and won our very first game ever as the Boston Strong against them. So that was exciting for us. And then we played a doubleheader back in May of this year in Central Park, and we won one of those games as well. So that's a good confidence builder. Once you start to get some wins under your belt, you know you can do it, and that just helps you move forward.
Exactly. Yo. And I'm also curious when it comes to, either batting at the plate or playing the field. Do you have a preference? Do you think you're stronger in one particular area over the other?
Oh, gosh. Well, this is just the way my mind works. I can tell you what I'm weakest at, which is running the bases. Base running is definitely my biggest struggle at this point. I love hitting the ball and I love being in the field. I need a lot of work on all of it, but the base running is challenging because I haven't had a lot of experience just running full speed anywhere. And then you're running towards something that you want to just keep running until you hit. And that isn't a natural, that doesn't come naturally to me. So that is definitely my biggest challenge at this point.
Right. Gotcha.
And my biggest addiction is hitting that ball. When that bat and that ball make contact, there's just no feeling like that.
I'm totally with you. It's such a powerful, it's only a split second, but yet it's so impactful,
Absolutely. It sure is.
Yo. And I understand you did get a chance to play with the Sirens, the all-women's team?
I did, and that was wonderful. It was the first time I'd ever been to Vegas.
Very cool.
And some of their players couldn't go, and so they were looking for some extra people and asked if I was interested because I had expressed some interest in their team. So I went out and played with them, and it was an absolutely gorgeous weekend for beep ball. The weather was perfect. A little windy, I will say. It was a little windy, but it was beautiful weather. And I got to meet the Panthers for the first time. I hadn't met any of them. And we got to play against some really great teams. We played the Thunder. We played the Philly Fire. And it was definitely a challenge for me. I was out in deep left field on defense, and that was different. We had also a different defensive. Our field was set up a little bit differently than I was used to, and then I'm usually short or third base with the Strong, and so I wasn't. It was a challenge to hear the ball as deep as I was with the Sirens. But it was a really great experience, and that is a great group of women. They are phenomenal. They're just, the work that they're doing, I think is wonderful, and I was so grateful that they invited me to come and play with them.
Nice. That's so great to hear. And I'm sure just kind of having that experience, and I'm sure from your perspective and that of a lot of women in the league, seeing a team like that and hopefully more to come in the future is encouraging, right?
Absolutely. And I hope that there will be. I know Southern California, they have a women's team that they just started, and I just wish all the luck in the world, all the good things for these women's teams, because I think most of us women in beep ball will experience at one time or another, if we're playing on another team, sitting on the bench, maybe not getting a lot of playing time, and that is challenging. So I really like what these teams are doing.
Absolutely. And hey, definitely wish you and the Boston Strong the best of luck in St.
Thank you.
Charles, in the St. Louis area for the World Series this year. We'll be really excited to see kind of how you guys fare and in your first rodeo there.
We'll be working hard.
No doubt. Yup. So in addition to beep ball, I understand you've gotten into some running. I know you talked about running the bases and kind of the challenge with that, but you've also done some kind of quote unquote regular running too, right?
I have, and I started that because my beep ball coach wanted us to do some things to kind of build up our endurance and our stamina. And I started by, going outside with a jump rope and working with that. But then I had gone to an parasports day at Tufts University, and they had kind of a fair set up with all different sorts of adaptive sports that you could get to know. And there was someone from Achilles International there, and I took a pamphlet, and I thought, well, I my experience with running up to this point has not been very positive, but I want to do something and just see where it goes. And the first day that I went to a run with the Boston chapter of Achilles, I was just struck by the amazing community. The community just welcomes you and just feels just like an amazing group of people. And so I kept coming back, and I wasn't sure if I would, but another one of the athletes said, you'll be surprised if you keep coming, you get hooked on it. And I was a little skeptical, but it's happening. And I did my first 5K back at the end of April, and
Nice.
looking forward to doing another one. I don't have anything set yet for another race coming up, but I'm ready to jump on it when I find one that I want to do, because I really am getting into it.
Right. That's awesome to hear.
And again, I think that is just like I had mentioned before, just one of the amazing joys that is, I'm experiencing in my life right now, is just all these things that I didn't think I would use to define myself ever. Would I ever put athlete in the same sentence as my name, or runner, and just to know that, really, and it's not over till it's over, and you always have a time and chances to have new experiences, and to become something that you didn't think you were, if you wanted, give it a try.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know, just kind of having followed your journey on social media and reading an article you had written, and I'm just super fascinated by someone, that kind of, I don't want to say later in life, but
You could say it.
Post childhood got into sports, which I feel like is, somewhat unique.
Yeah. I mean, I never would have thought I would be here, but here I am, and I think what I'm working on right now too is kind of letting go of unreasonable expectations and just enjoying the journey, because I don't know at my age and moving forward what I will be able to accomplish. But if I focus too much on the big picture, then I won't enjoy all the small little victories and the new things every day that I could do that I couldn't do the day before.
Right. So true. That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit more on running. So in terms of guides, in terms of tethers, just talk to me about your experience with those.
Sure. So I'm not sure if there's a specific kind of a name for it or not. The tether that you use, or that I've experienced using, where there's a loop on one end and and then a loop on the other end. So I'll hold one, the guide holds the other, and we just run next to each other. And I think as a guide and runner team, that's a pretty specific personal thing. So, for example, I will tell my guides that I want them to just shove me around if they have to, because I can be a little bit all over the place. And like if they need to just shove me one way or the other to keep us on the right path and keep us safe, to do that. And, I'm sure there are other people who wouldn't want something like that. But it is I feel like it's a very personal thing, which is also what I love about it's kind of like a relationship, even if it only lasts for a race.
Sure.
It's a really neat experience of teamwork.
Absolutely. Yep. Give and take, a lot of mutual things you kind of have to agree on. And if it doesn't work out, it can definitely make the race and just the whole experience a lot more challenging.
Yeah, definitely. I've been fortunate to, I've only done the one race so far, but it was a good experience and I had an excellent guide. So
nice. So you definitely hope to do more 5Ks, maybe even a 10K or beyond.
Yeah. I am ready for it. I am ready for it. I have a goal set for time for my 5K, and then 10K, bring it. I'm not with a 10K. I wouldn't be so concerned about the time at this point. I would just be about finishing.
Sure.
And I'm ready. I'm ready for it all.
Awesome.
No marathons, probably no half marathons yet, but give me a 10K, I'll do it.
Right. Hey, never say never, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Hey, I absolutely love that attitude. Many other sports for the blind that you've had the chance to try, or maybe you've heard about and are interested in giving a whirl at some point?
Well, this one's not specifically for the blind, but I definitely have been interested in rowing. I haven't really, I was out on the water once, and then I tried at the para sports day that I was at. There was also adaptive rowing, and I gave that a try just on the indoor machine. And I would definitely be interested in pursuing that more. And then another one that I would love to try is goalball. I have not gotten a chance to experience goalball at all, but I would love to do that.
Nice. Yep. Very cool.
And I did get back into the cross country skiing. I've gone now to Ski for Light International Week because this past year was right in about 20 minutes from my home.
That's right, in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I had to go there, and I think I'll be back for sure, because that's an amazing program and experience.
Very cool. It's definitely on my list. I've never tried skiing, so hopefully just to be able to stand up and,
right.
Step one, baby steps.
Standing up is the first part, so.
One of these years I'll get out there.
Well, I'll be waiting for you. I'll be watching for you.
Cool. I appreciate that. So then back to your music. So I know you mentioned you're a gigging musician, and I understand you play the fiddle.
I do. I play the fiddle, and I also play the concertina, which is, if people don't know, it's kind of like a little accordion. Oh,
cool. Very cool. And I'm curious, did you play any music at all? Or?
I did. My mother got my brother and I into violin lessons when I was 3 years old. And then when I was 9 years old, I begged her to let me quit violin lessons so I could play the piano. And so I took piano lessons from the time I was 9. I studied all the way up through my junior year of college. And then I stopped playing piano, and over those years, at some point, I had heard fiddle music and thought, "Oh, you can do this with the violin." I didn't realize that, so then I really got into that, and that's kind of where my professional music career really got started because I fell in love with that sort of music. I always say that it chose me because that's really how it feels. That music picked me to play it.
Right, absolutely. I'm definitely wondering in terms of instruction, do you know any kind of Braille music, or as far as your teachers you've had over the years, to talk to me about your experience as a blind musician?
So the first experience that I had when I was a child was learning violin by the Suzuki method, which, if people don't know, that at least in the beginning, it's a lot of it is sort of by ear, and then I think there's some ways that you read it, but it's not musical notes in the I'm not exactly sure how that works, but for me it was all by ear. And then when I
Sure.
started piano lessons, I also did that by ear, but I was starting to learn more advanced classical pieces, and my teacher would teach me, a little bit of the piece every week, and I would memorize it and add it to what I had already learned. And then when I went to college, my professor there said, "No way, this is not how we're going to do this." And so I had seen Braille music a little bit before that, but at that point is when I really seriously started to learn it so that I could study piano using Braille music. And so I did that up and through my junior year of college. But then after I stopped playing piano and I got into Irish music, Irish fiddle, that's traditionally learned by ear, and so that's what I went back to is learning things by ear.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I know I have heard from other blind musicians in terms of Braille music that it is super challenging, difficult. Would you agree?
I would, and I don't know if it would have been as challenging for me if I had started learning it at an early age, but I tend to think it would have been that it is just challenging because you eventually have to memorize it anyway.
Yeah, that does make sense. So then in terms of a band, so I understand you do have a band, right?
Yeah, I'm in two bands. One is called Conic, which is, if people don't know, a province or a region in Ireland. So that's where the name comes from, because most of the people in the band are from there. I'm not Irish myself at all, but but they took me in. So I play with them. We've gotten to have a lot of great experiences. We went to Ireland to play at the Clifton Arts Festival a couple of years ago, and we were there for 11 days, and it was a really great experience.
Wow.
We played in other parts of the country here, and that's been great. And then I play with another kind of folk rock sort of band called the Haulers, and we have a leader whose name is Teddy Larkin, and he's I think a really great singer songwriter, and so that's my other group that I play with. That one I feel a little bit out of my league in, because I'm not as used to playing that sort of music. So it's a challenge, but it gives me a good a way to kind of stretch the boundaries of what I'm able to do and learn new things.
Right, absolutely.
My musicianship compared to a lot of other blind and visually impaired musicians that I know of, I feel funny calling myself a musician in front of them, but there's some amazing musicians out there.
Absolutely, yeah. I did want to mention we do have a piece that we're going to play at the end of this episode after the interview called Christmas Eve that Wynter and her group composed, right, or played.
We didn't compose it. It is a traditional Irish tune. I'm not sure actually. I believe it's traditional. I don't know of a composer for it. But it's a tune that most people in the traditional Irish music world would know.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that here at the end of this episode. Just a couple other quick things. I am curious, just in terms of, performing as a musician versus performing as an athlete. Any similarities? Anything that comes to mind in terms of the, kind of the similarities or differences between those two things?
I would say, and this took me a little bit by surprise when I started playing beatball, but I would say I get stage fright for both of them. Being a musician and being out in the field, I get the butterflies in both cases.
Yep.
And I think that the sports are actually helping me hone the mental focus in a way that's going to help me in my music in a way that I hadn't expected. So that's one thing that I was kind of surprised at. But yeah, the butterflies, I get butterflies in both cases.
Right.
For sure.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
And then before we wrap up here, any social media, if anyone wants to find additional music out there, how can they find you online?
Sure. Well, our band Connect has a website. It is connectband.com. That is CONNACHT band.com. That's where people can find our music and find us. Teddy Larkin and the Haulers. I don't think that we actually have a Facebook page, but if you searched us on Facebook, you would probably find us because we have posted some things.
Sure. No problem. I'll definitely, include links to at least that website and the names of those groups in the show notes.
Great.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, again, we've been chatting with Wynter Pingel here on this episode of Eyes Free Sports. And Wynter, thank you so much for your time. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you here and getting to learn more about your story. And again, best of luck at the World Series coming up here this summer.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Alrighty. And again, stay tuned for Christmas Eve coming up here in just a second. To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter at Eyes Free Sports.